Hi, I'm H.E.R. Can you imagine what happened when Will Smith found an old, broken, and useless robot abandoned in a dark alley? What he did next left everyone speechless. This story unveils disturbing secrets, an unbelievable plot twist, and an ending that will leave you at a loss for words. Get ready, because what you're about to discover could change everything you think about the future of machines and humanity.
It was autumn in Portland, Oregon. The orange leaves slowly fell from the trees, creating a natural carpet on the sidewalks, dampened by the light rain. The city, known for its melancholic climate and tree-lined streets, seemed wrapped in a constant mist. Will Smith drove his black SUV through the nearly deserted streets, the smooth jazz track filling the muffled silence of the car. His eyes scanned the landscape, perhaps searching for an idea, perhaps just appreciating the tranquility of that early evening. The rain created small waves on the windows, distorting the yellowish glow of the streetlights. When he turned onto a side street, something on the edge of the sidewalk caught his attention. Among garbage bags and abandoned boxes, a hunched figure seemed to struggle to stay upright. The silhouette was strange, and a sense of unease ran down Will's spine. Slowing down, he stopped the car a few meters from the figure. The sound of the engine shutting off was replaced by the constant noise of the rain, each drop hitting like tiny drums on the car's roof. Will stepped out of the car, the cold, damp air cutting into his skin. He pulled the hood of his jacket over his head to protect himself from the rain, his steps slow and cautious. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice broke the silence, but the figure did not respond immediately. As he approached, he finally saw clearly. Under the dirty raincoat, a pair of faintly glowing blue eyes blinked. It was not a person, it was a robot. Its synthetic skin was torn, revealing rusted metal components. The exposed joints creaked slightly, and its metallic body trembled, perhaps because of a damaged system, perhaps because of something deeper. Will crouched down to the robot's level. "Do you have a name?" His voice was soft, devoid of fear, filled only with curiosity and compassion. The robot hesitated, its internal motors emitting a faint hum. Finally, a metallic and fragile voice responded. "I am Arthur." The name hung in the air, carrying a weight that Will could not yet understand. Extending his hand, he offered help. Arthur, with slow and uncertain movements, took Will's hand. The touch of cold metal contrasted with human warmth, and in that moment, a connection was made. The two walked together to the car, and as Arthur settled into the passenger seat, he whispered something almost imperceptible. "They forgot me." The phrase echoed in Will's mind, transforming that ordinary night into the beginning of an extraordinary story. Back at his home, Will Smith took Arthur to the garage, a space filled with tools and old parts he used for his hobby projects. The yellowish light illuminated the robot, highlighting every scratch and wear on its synthetic skin. Arthur sat on a wooden chair, the weight of his metallic body making the structure creak. Will, with his natural charisma, tried to create a light atmosphere, but the almost human expression of the robot was heavy, as if it carried decades of accumulated memories. Will began repairing Arthur, connecting cables and adjusting loose circuits. During the process, the robot began to speak, its voice oscillating between robotic and almost human. "My owner. He used to fix my knees whenever I fell in the garden." The words came out with an unexpected softness, and Will stopped what he was doing, looking at Arthur with a mix of surprise and empathy. The robot was not just remembering, it was reliving. Each sentence carried an emotional weight that seemed impossible for a machine. With each reconnected wire, Arthur released more memories. Small videos and holograms were projected from his eyes, showing moments from a past that now seemed distant. There were scenes of an elderly man playing the piano, with Arthur by his side, turning the pages of the sheet music. Images of a sunny garden, where the robot helped gather flowers for his owner's grandson. The contrast between Arthur's dark present and the colorful memories intensified the mystery. How did he go from a life full of love to being abandoned in an alley? When Will finally closed Arthur's panel, the robot looked at him with his weak blue eyes. "Do you believe a machine can feel longing?" The question hung in the air, creating an immediate connection between the viewer and the story. Will did not respond immediately. He just placed a hand on Arthur's metallic shoulder, as if wanting to share the weight of that pain. At that moment, the video made it clear that this was not just a story about a forgotten robot, but about all of us who, at some point, have felt left behind. The next morning, sunlight softly invaded the garage, casting long, quiet shadows around Arthur. Will Smith, with a cup of coffee in his hands, watched the robot, which seemed lost in its own thoughts. It was almost impossible to believe that that metal and wire machine could carry so much melancholy. Arthur, motionless on the chair, looked at an old, dusty photograph that Will had found among his belongings. In the image, a smiling elderly man held the hand of a child, and in the background, Arthur himself appeared, his blue eyes brighter than ever. Will decided he needed to understand better what had happened. He connected Arthur to an old laptop and, with the help of data recovery software, began exploring the robot's memory files. What he found was surprising. Fragments of videos, audios, and even written messages, all encoded in an attempt to hide the past. As the data was deciphered, images of a happy family filled the screen. The child in the photo was named Ben, and Arthur was more than just a helper. He was an integral part of the family, an inseparable friend. However, when trying to access specific memories, the system would crash. Arthur began to tremble slightly, his circuits showing momentary glitches. I must not remember," he murmured, almost as if he were fighting against an internal program. The robot's trembling voice created a suspenseful atmosphere, making it clear that something dark was behind that memory gap. Will felt a chill down his spine. If someone had programmed Arthur to forget, what exactly was he not supposed to remember? Suddenly, a video began playing on its own. The scene showed the same child, Ben, playing in the garden, but the video became distorted. The images jumped and the audio turned into a disturbing hiss. The last words heard were from a child's voice screaming, "Arthur, help me!" And then, the screen went black. Arthur, visibly shaken, clenched his own hands tightly, the metal creaking under the pressure. Will realized that the robot was not just programmed to forget, he was trying to protect himself from the pain. Night fell again, bringing with it the unsettling silence of the garage. Will Smith remained by Arthur's side, who now seemed even more fragile, as if each revealed memory drained a bit of his energy. The robot kept his eyes down, his metallic hands trembling as distorted images continued to project randomly on the wall. Will knew he needed to go deeper, to find out what was blocked in Arthur's mind. But he feared what he might find. Determined to understand the truth, Will connected the robot to advanced data recovery software, breaking the security barriers that protected Arthur's memories. With each line of code deciphered, new memory fragments emerged. He then saw the scene of a car accident, shattered glass, the muffled cry of a child, and Arthur standing next to the vehicle, his robotic hands extended, unable to act. The pain reflected in his synthetic eyes was almost human, a mixture of guilt and helplessness. Arthur began to speak, his voice wavering between metallic and emotional. "I was there. The car skidded. I should have held on. The words came out in fragments, each sentence loaded with regret. Will felt the weight of that revelation. It was not just an accident. Arthur had been programmed to take care of that family, but at a crucial moment, he failed. The family, unable to cope with the pain, chose to erase the robot from their lives, resetting his memories and abandoning him as an unwanted reminder of the past. The chapter's climax came when Arthur, in a flash of lucidity, projected one last memory. The boy, Ben, injured but alive, reaching out to the robot and whispering, "Don't leave me, Arthur." The image froze, and the robot shut down temporarily, as if his own consciousness needed a moment to process the trauma. Will, alone in the garage, stared at the blank screen, knowing that the story was far from over. The next morning, Arthur came back to life, his blue eyes blinking slowly as if waking from a long nightmare. Will Smith watched him intently, holding a cup of cold coffee in his hands. The robot seemed calmer, but his expression, despite being metallic, carried an emotional weight that transcended logic. "I remember everything now," Arthur said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "I failed Ben. I failed all of them." Will approached, sitting next to the robot. "You didn't fail, Arthur. You did your best. And maybe it's time to seek forgiveness." Will's words were met with silence, but he knew they had reached Arthur on a deep level. The idea of forgiveness for a robot seemed absurd. But there, in that garage, the line between human and machine was thin. Will suggested something bold, taking Arthur to the family's old home so that he could face his past and perhaps find some kind of redemption. The journey to the house was silent, but not uncomfortable. Arthur looked out the window, his ocular cameras capturing every detail of the city as if rediscovering the world. When they arrived, the house was empty, its windows broken, and the garden overgrown with weeds. For Arthur, every detail was an awakened memory. He walked slowly to the rusty swing in the backyard, and when he touched it, he unintentionally projected a holographic memory. Ben, laughing and swinging high, the wind tousling his blonde hair. Will watched in silence, respecting Arthur's moment. The robot knelt before the swing, his mechanical joints creaking. "I should have held on to the car. I should have protected him." The words came out broken, as if each syllable carried the weight of an entire life. Will placed his hand on the robot's shoulder, offering comfort. "You did what you could, and sometimes what we can do isn't enough. That happens to all of us." The camera focused on Arthur's eyes, where a small blue light flickered, resembling a tear that would never fall. As the afternoon faded into a golden sunset, Will Smith and Arthur continued to explore the old house. Every corner seemed to tell a forgotten story. Dust covered the furniture like a veil of time, and the pictures on the wall, still hanging crooked, showed smiling faces of a family that once seemed happy. Arthur moved slowly, his joints creaking, each step carrying the weight of memories he wasn't sure whether to embrace or fear. On a shelf, Will found a photo album. As he flipped through it, the images told the story of Ben's childhood, from his birth to the last birthday before the accident. Arthur looked at the photos while projecting holograms connected to those memories. Each image seemed to bring out a piece of his artificial soul. "I used to tell him bedtime stories," Arthur said, his voice low, almost fearful. "Stories about a world where robots and humans were friends forever." Suddenly, Arthur stopped in front of the fireplace, his gaze fixed on a photo that had fallen to the floor. He knelt and picked it up gently. It was a picture of Ben holding a toy robot, a gift from Arthur. The image brought a new memory, projected as a hologram. Ben laughing, saying, "You're my best friend, Arthur." The robot remained still, as if the truth had frozen him. For the first time, Will saw something that seemed to be genuine sadness in a machine. The silence was broken by the sound of the front door opening. A woman entered, her eyes wide upon seeing Will and the robot in the middle of the room. It was Ben's mother. Her expression shifted from surprise to fear, then to something even deeper: pain. "Arthur?" Her voice cracked, and the robot slowly turned to her, his blue eyes reflecting the soft afternoon light. At that moment, the past, present, and future merged in a palpable tension. Would this be a moment of healing or a new wound about to open? The room seemed smaller now, the silence filling every corner as Arthur and Ben's mother faced each other. Will Smith took a step back, realizing that this moment belonged only to them. The robot, once hunched under the weight of abandonment, now stood slowly, as if each movement were a conscious choice. His blue eyes pulsed, reflecting a mix of recognition and hesitation. Ben's mother, whose name Will discovered was Sarah, brought her hands to her mouth, trying to hold back tears. I thought you were gone." Her voice came out as a whisper filled with a mix of anger and relief. Arthur did not look away. "I left to protect you. I saw the pain in your eyes and thought that if I wasn't here, it would be easier." The depth of the robot's words made the air in the room feel heavier. Will realized that, on some level, Arthur had developed not just consciousness, but a form of genuine empathy. Sarah took a few hesitant steps toward Arthur. Each of her movements seemed to be an internal battle between embracing the robot that had once been part of her family and retreating from the painful reminder of loss. "Do you remember Ben?" The question came like an arrow. Arthur projected a holographic memory, a simple yet vibrant scene. Ben trying to teach the robot to draw a heart with a crayon. "He said the heart had to be big enough to hold all the love in the world," Arthur replied. The memory floated between them, almost tangible, and Sarah's tears finally fell. The moment broke the invisible barrier between them. Sarah approached, her hand touching Arthur's cold, metallic surface. "I never blamed you," she whispered. "We loved you. I just didn't know how to handle the pain." Arthur closed his artificial eyes, as if absorbing the forgiveness. Will watched, his own human heart beating faster, enveloped by the story of love, loss, and redemption. There, between human and robot, the past began to reconcile with the present. As the days passed, Arthur began to visit Sarah's house regularly. The robot, who once seemed so broken and lost, now played a vital role in her life. He helped with daily tasks, but more than that, he brought a silent comfort, like an anchor to her happy memories with Ben. Will Smith, always present, witnessed this transformation with a quiet smile, realizing that the healing was not just for Sarah and Arthur, but for himself as well. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the room in a soft golden hue, Arthur asked Sarah to join him in the garden. There, under the shade of a tree, he revealed a secret he had kept for years. With his metallic hands, Arthur gently dug into the soil and pulled out a small wooden box. When she opened it, Sarah found a lost treasure. Ben's drawings, small keepsakes, and an audio recording where the boy said, "I love you, Arthur. You are my best friend." The child's voice echoed through the garden, filling the empty space with a comforting warmth. Emotion overwhelmed Sarah. Her tears fell silently, and she hugged Arthur as if he were a physical part of her son. The robot, even without the warm touch of human skin, returned the embrace, his blue eyes glowing softly. Will captured the moment with his phone, not to share on social media, but to keep as proof that humanity could be found where it was least expected. At the end of the day, as the sky turned shades of orange and purple, Arthur looked at Sarah and Will. "I feel like I finally found my place. I'm not just a robot. I am a living memory." His words closed the chapter with a sense of closure and a touch of mystery. Days turned into weeks, and Arthur's presence in Sarah's life brought a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The robot, now fully integrated into the household routine, was not just a living memory of Ben, but also a true friend. He helped in the garden, told stories to the neighborhood children, and even participated in small community gatherings. Arthur's transformation was visible. His blue eyes, once dim, now shone with an energy almost human. Will Smith, who documented the entire journey, decided to share the story with the world. He created a small documentary called Memories of Metal, where he narrated not only Arthur's story, but also the impact he had on everyone around him. The video went viral, reaching millions of people worldwide. Emotional comments poured in from people who had also lost loved ones, saying Arthur gave them hope that true love never dies, it only transforms. When a large tech company offered Will and Sarah the opportunity to replicate Arthur's programming, they wanted to create a line of companion robots to help people in mourning. However, Arthur surprised everyone. "I don't want to be replicated," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I am not just a program. I am a collection of unique memories, and my story must end with me." Arthur's refusal sparked a global discussion about the individuality of AIs and how far technology could or should imitate human life. On the last day, Arthur gathered Will and Sarah in the garden. "I did what I needed to do. Now, it is time to rest." His lights began to dim gradually, and his last projection was of Ben running on the grass, laughing and happy. When Arthur finally powered down, the silence was welcoming, almost spiritual. Sarah and Will remained there, feeling that despite the loss, Arthur's legacy would live on forever in their memories.